Welcome to this video where we'll be moving further along with our cartoon character design. By now you'll have started to experience some of the techniques for tracing elements, including the fill features, and you've more than likely used the brush tool, which is this tool here, to trace around on the screen and actually draw different effects. Now what we want to do now is we're going to be assuming that you have hand drawn a sketch, or similarly have been on the internet and found an image that you want to use as a basis of your design. And once that is scanned in, you're going to be using Illustrator to refine that design. So what I've done for this particular task, I'll just bring this across onto the screen here. On our Canvas website, you'll notice that we have an Exploring Digital Tools file. You'll need to download that file, and that will give you this screen that we're working with here. Now your screen won't actually have that layer. Your screen will look exactly like this. It will say Refine Sketch. What we want to do is we want to add in an additional layer, which we'll call Pen. So double click on that and go Pen and go Enter. And what we're going to be doing is exploring the use of the Pen tool. Now the Pen tool is located just up here on the left. If we click on the part that has the arrow, we'll notice there's four features. One is the straight drawing tool. One is this feature called Add an Anchor Point, which we'll have a look at. Delete an anchor point, and Anchor Point tool. Very simple sort of design. We're going to make sure we're on the Pen tool. And we're just going to try and trace around. So click all the way through, just keep clicking. I'm going to do it fairly rough. Just continue to click around, and I've already got another file that's already ready for me to go. That's a further step in, all the way through. As you see, I'm not being the most accurate person doing this. And then when you get to the last point, you'll notice that it highlights this last point to say anchor. Click on that, and that locks in the actual design. Now what we're going to do is just quickly, I'm going to illustrate what these additional tools do. So we go Add Anchor Point. I come along to this point here and I click on it. It adds these anchor point paths on, and what that allows me to do is to come back to the selection tool, and all working well, I can rotate and move that in. If I was to do the reverse, the Delete Anchor Point tool, and click on it, it removes it and straightens it back out. You'll find that as you're tracing around this with your pencil, you may need to use those to add a point or remove a point where it's not quite working out, and there's a couple of spots where there's an issue here. What we really want to look at is this anchor point tool. So shortcut is Shift C, and what we do is once we're selected on this, it's got our angle tool here, just anywhere on the line you can click and drag it back in so that it matches the curvature of our character that we're working on. All the way through, just matching. I happen to be very lucky here and have my pen points almost exactly as I want them. Just do it very rough. Now I'm going to hit a point here in a moment, which I'm going to jump straight to, which is over here. Now you see that I can bring that out, but you see I've got a problem. No matter what I do here, I can't really trace over my line. So what I do is I go back to my point tool here. I'm going to add an anchor point. So I think if I put one here in the middle, and I use my mouse, I can drag that back out to there. I can move a few of these tools around actually, but this one's now causing me a problem. I don't really seem to be able to get it to match. So let's use my delete tool, delete it, go back to my anchor point tool. As you see, I can now get the curvature just about right. It needs a little bit of more of a play there to get that quite the way we want it. So sometimes you do need to click on the points and move them in, and then of course the actual anchor point tool itself to move them back into position. As I said earlier, I've already got one where I've been through and done this, and of course part of your activity is to go through and do both of the actual layers as you're going through. So I want to make sure you've actually finished all of it. Once you've done that, you are getting closer to the point you need to. Now you can of course make sure you've not done what I've done here, and that is to make sure you've actually given the stroke line. So when I take that away, I've got a line. You could create an additional layer and add it onto it, but of course if I remove the background image, we start to see the trace outline of what we've got. So just to speed this video along, so you'll take time tracing around each point and continuing on with that, is I'm going to jump to you need. Okay, which is this one here. So this is one of the files that I've already got ready to go. And if we look at our tracing elements, there we go, I've got that ready to go, that's colored in pink. Once we have that, we can now start to explore some of our fill options. So with these two lines here, if you wanted to fill those in, just on those 2 points there, and say make that a black color, you could not do that, that's not quite the way that we want it, is that we want to get in between those 2 points and actually have it solid filled. So in this particular case we've used a different layer, which we've got, and we've filled each part individually. So one of the cool features that I want to show you that you've probably not used yet is the live paint bucket tool. So what that allows us to do is to highlight the entire object, and if we come over to the side, you'll notice there's a number of options. Be very careful clicking on this perspective tool. If you do, you need to click out of it, go right on that tiny little cross. It's a common problem that I get, is live paint bucket tool. So that tool there, we want to give it a color, black, and the idea is to go through and start highlighting the inner layers of what we're looking for. It's a very simple tool. So first thing was to make sure you highlight the entire object, come across to our live paint bucket tool, select on the color, and then click in the individual parts. Now if that doesn't work, that's usually because you have not finished off all of the pen points. In other words, there are gaps. So part of this feature relies on there being no gaps. So it does require you to take your time. It is a bit of a fiddly process. And as you can see here, you can spend additional time later on and you can add additional points. So this one's been rounded out and another feature's been added here to add a bit of depth and color into it. Have a bit of a play. Take your time. If you make a mistake, it's okay. Remember to name your layers as you go. So you should, in the end, have at least 3 layers, which is our original layer, which is locked, and the 2 unlocked layers there.